Yakuza 3 is not my favorite game in the series. In fact, it might just be my least favorite, and yes, that's including the original.
You can't be serious.
But I am. I'm always deadly serious.
That's not to say that 3 is a bad game by any means, just that in many ways it's the lowest point of one of the best and most underrated franchises in the industry. I'm not the only one who has issues with this game though. While it has its defenders, a lot of Yakuza fans are critical of 3, and some go so far as to say that it can be skipped. And I get where they're coming from when they say that. The story is more or less self-contained and isn't very relevant to later games in the series. The combat is a bit clunky and fights can go on for far too long. But in spite of its flaws, I found myself coming back to 3 more than any other Yakuza game. Something about it just stuck with me more than the others, and having played most of the series by now, I think I've pinpointed what it is that makes 3 truly special. Yakuza 3 has the best side characters, and they are used to develop the game into something more thematic and meaningful than perhaps any other game in the series. At its core, Yakuza 3 is about found family, and it goes to great and repeated lengths to demonstrate how important found family can be. Almost every single character, at least in the Okinawa section of the game, reinforce this theme and why it's important. Obviously, Kiryu is raising an adopted daughter, Haruka, as he has been since the end of Yakuza 1. But by 3, he's running an orphanage, taking care of 8 more children, and helping these kids solve their problems is a significant amount of the game's content. A lot of fans have issues with these scenes, saying that they're boring and not related to the plot, and while there may be some truth to that, moments like these are the heart and soul of Yakuza 3. Every single child at some point has an issue and needs Kiryu to help them through it, showing that he cares about them just as much as any true father would. These aren't just random problems made as filler to pad out the game, there's a reason for all of them. Shiro is being bullied at school, Izumi wants to adopt a dog, Taichi has to deal with a medical condition, Mitsuo wants to ask out a girl he likes. These aren't the problems of a criminal thug, they're problems that a father or caretaker would have to deal with, and by dealing with them, the game is telling us that Kiryu's new life is meaningful. Then there's Rikiya, a young Yakuza member who Kiryu meets early on who comes to respect him a great deal. He starts referring to Kiryu as his Aniki, a term of respect used by the Yakuza, but one that literally means older brother. Now, that phrase is used a lot in this series. Kiryu refers to Majima as his older brother, but he sort of has to because they were in the Tojo clan together, the same family. But Kiryu isn't a member of Rikiya's crime family, and he chooses to refer to him as such anyway, so you can see why that's important. The relationship between Kiryu and Rikiya feels much more fraternal than with any other characters in the series, I think. And by the end, Rikiya feels like a real little brother to Kiryu, for better and for worse. This culminates in a scene where Kiryu helps Rikiya finish his tattoo, the snake on his back, by giving it eyes. Symbolically, having the tattoo finished represents Rikiya becoming a complete and whole person, something he never would have achieved without Kiryu's help. Eyes, and the insight they can give into a man's soul, is a recurring theme in the series, Kiryu himself often being notable for his eyes.
Beautiful eyes.
And I think the fact that his tattoo is a viper, sort of like a little dragon, is meant to further highlight his relationship with Kiryu, the Dragon of Dojima. Another major supporting character is Shigeru Nakahara, the patriarch of the Ryudo family. Like Kiryu, he is also raising an adopted daughter, Saki, and does his best to shield her from the life of crime he lives. At one point, Saki is kidnapped, and the culprit is revealed to be Saki's biological mother, who is cruel and abusive towards her. In the end, Saki chooses to stay with Nakahara, who she sees as her savior and protector, the game clearly affirming that he is her real father, blood relation or not. This relationship will go on to give both of them the strength they need to overcome their challenges in life. Seeing Nakahara in danger gives Saki the strength to overcome her trauma-induced mutism, and hearing his daughter cry out for him gives Nakahara the power to literally grab a bull by the horns in what is probably the game's best scene. Saki's mother isn't the only time a biological parent is portrayed in a negative light either. One of the orphans is being bullied by his teacher's son, and that teacher, Mr. Hashimoto, is a power-tripping dweeb who will let his son get away with anything he wants. He isn't a responsible father, and by letting his son be a bully, he's doing him more harm than good. The game isn't trying to say that all biological parents are evil, some sub-stories do show decent ones, and the idea that there can be good parents is implicit. Rather, the game's just trying to show that blood relations are not inherently better or healthier than found families. It might be no surprise then that we see this game from the point of view of Kazuma Kiryu, a man who is, by the way, also an orphan and also had a found family. Yakuza 3 is particularly infamous for Joji Kazuma, the secret identical twin brother of Kiryu's adoptive father, Shintaro Kazuma. But I think his inclusion makes more sense as an opportunity to again hammer home the point the game is trying to make. Kiryu literally looks directly into the camera and says his bond with Shintaro was deeper than blood. Kiryu, a man with no direct relation to Shintaro, was closer to him than Joji, his literal identical twin brother, was. Okay, so Kiryu, Haruka, the orphans, Rikiya, Nakahara, Saki, Joji, all of these characters can in some way be traced back to the central theme, but there's actually one more. The game's primary antagonist, Mine. Mine is, I think, a sort of dark reflection of Kiryu, and probably the most definitive way the game explores its theme. Like Kiryu, Mine was an orphan who lost his parents at a young age, but unlike Kiryu or any of the kids at Morning Glory, he never had anyone to truly care for him. Lacking a loving mentor, Mine became obsessed with the concept of trying to find worth and purpose in his life. When becoming rich left him unfulfilled, he decided to join the Yakuza, and quickly after joining, he became enamored with Daigo Dojima, who he describes as the only person to ever believe in him, and when Daigo is injured, Mine suffers a sort of breakdown. We see in Mine what becomes of people who are never able to make genuine connections. We see in him that all his power, all his strength, all his intelligence are ultimately meaningless. Opposite to Kiryu, a man who has known for his entire life what he lives, fights, and dies for, Mine has been stumbling aimlessly through his life, achieving success after success to no real end. And I think in this way, Mine is sort of a criticism of Japanese society. There's no dancing around the fact that, believe it or not, Yakuza is actually a very politically charged series, one that frequently shows the perspectives of outcasts and people who would be looked down upon by the wider Japanese public. Criminals, people who work in seedy occupations, even orphans, these are the sort of people that societies, Japan especially, like to sweep under the rug and forget about. Mine, on the other hand, is young, handsome, and successful, everything that society says men should be. But despite that, he is deeply and truly unhappy and unfulfilled, and became desperate for any sort of interpersonal attachment to give his life meaning. By explicitly stating that he, like Kiryu, is an orphan, the game draws a parallel between these two men and invites us to ask the question, why are they different? And the answer the game suggests is that Mine was raised without a loving guardian, where Kiryu was raised by Shintaro Kazuma, a criminal and an assassin, but also someone wise and caring enough to impart meaningful values onto Kiryu. Further, Mine being an orphan also kind of sets the stakes for Kiryu, raising the idea that without mentorship, any one of Kiryu's kids could become just like Mine, unfulfilled and joyless. There are so many surrogate familial connections that if you tried to plot them all out, it would look like this. I just can't imagine that a game that has this many non-biological connections isn't trying to drive home a point. But even outside the found family theme, Yakuza 3's side characters are just remarkably well written. The game gives time to almost all of them, lets them have their moments, and most of them get a legitimate character arc. In a series where even some main characters don't undergo much meaningful change, 3 gives a lot of gravity to characters who would never reappear in the series. Saki goes from a traumatized mute girl to being friendly and open. Nakahara learns his daughter loves him and dedicates himself to being her father. Rikiya finishes his tattoo and becomes a real man. Mikio, who is like a little brother to Rikiya, grows into his role as a protector and surrogate uncle to the children at Morning Glory. Oh yeah, he also has a scene where his biological father tells him the Ryota family is his home, so again, the importance of found family. It just feels like everyone is being taken seriously. A weaker script would have written someone off as a comic relief character or tried to give more attention to Kiryu. But I actually really appreciate how little of the spotlight Kiryu hogs. Not that he doesn't get great moments in this game, he absolutely does, but he mostly serves to help other characters get their own big moments. And while helping a child work through their problems might not be the most exciting and memorable moment, I think it's absolutely wonderful how Yakuza 3 shows that Kiryu can be wise and gentle just as much as he can be powerful and ferocious. Kiryu is, after all, like a dragon. Some people have said that Kiryu doesn't have much of an arc in this game, and you know what, that's true, but I don't think he needs one. This is where he belongs. This is what he was meant to do. Kiryu doesn't need any more growth. He's grown into the person he wants to be. Now he wants to help others grow to their full potential, and that, more than anything, is, I think, what this game is really about. So, yes, Yakuza 3 has its problems. Maybe enemies block too much, maybe there are too many encounters, maybe a lot of the sub-stories are tedious, maybe the plot reads like a bad soap opera, and maybe the chase sequences are a blight on gaming. Also, I never managed to get golf to work, but despite all its shortcomings, I just can't help but love this game and these characters. In a series full of iconic moments and frenetic action, there's just something that keeps calling me back to 3. It feels cozy. It feels like coming home. Thank you very much for watching.